Hello and welcome to Africa Today. I'm Blessing Idahosa. Now, a typical evening in any major African city would usually include a beautiful skyline, a breath of fresh air, roadside music, plus an impressive cityscape with bright lights. But that's if there is electricity at that point. But things can quickly switch from nice to dangerous when criminal activities like mugging, bag snatching and carjacking gets into the mix without any sign or warning. That was a situation that played out recently in South Africa when armed men mugged and robbed a journalist in Johannesburg even as television cameras rolled on them. And so we ask, what are your thoughts on the rates of crime in South Africa and other parts of the continent? You can join the conversation and share your thoughts with us on Twitter at CVC Africa Today. We'll take a report and Africa Today will continue. Welcome on board.
Two men, one armed with a gun, were caught on camera late on Tuesday, mugging a South African journalist in Johannesburg as he prepared for a live television report on Zambian President Ejalungu's hospital treatment. The incident is just one of scores of often violent crimes, including rape, robberies and murder, recorded every day in Africa's most advanced economy, earning it a place among the most violent countries in the world outside a war zone.
Toe kinders, onskullige kinders wat in parke speel met hoop. As jy ouens kon skiet het, dan hulle hoop om kom as ek meen in 'n crossfire, ek dink baie ook real, hier skiet hulle onskullige laities ook. Wat miskien brood gaan koop het, melk gaan koop het, dan kom jy van die winkel af, dan skiet hulle hom.
We need to increase our visibility around those to ensure that as those people, find themselves working at night in difficult circumstances, how could we be of help?
Statistics show that the number of aggravated robberies increased from about 105,000 cases in 2013 to almost 120,000 cases in 2014, an increase of more than 12%. According to police, the recent mugging came a day after popular South African hip-hop artist Nkululeko Habedi was killed when his girlfriend allegedly stabbed him on Monday. Last year, South Africa's Football Association launched a gun control campaign in the wake of the high-profile shootings of the national team captain, Senzo Meyiwa, and model River Steenkamp, who was killed in 2013 by her Paralympic boyfriend, Oscar Pistorius. Meanwhile, government says it has intensified the fight against crime to protect the rights of citizens and will continue in its efforts to reduce the ugly trend to ensure that people who live in South Africa feel safe. Amina Hamid, Africa Today.
Glad to have you back. Now, apart from making away with mobile phones and laptops after the mugging, many say the attitude and remarks by the attackers depicted the sad state of how human life is viewed on the streets of South Africa. Now, joining me on Africa Today, I have Liberos Oshoma, a lawyer and political analyst based in Lagos, Nigeria. Welcome to the program, Mr. Oshoma.
My pleasure, always.
Now on Skype, I have Dr. Jendele Humbo, a political analyst, joining me from Mafikeng in South Africa. Mr. Humbo, thank you so much for your time with us here on Africa Today. Let me start with you, Mr. Oshoma. A few days ago, not in broad daylight this time, but in front of cameras, journalists rather, were robbed. What does this speak to you about South Africa's security situation?
Basically, those... In yesteryears, it would have been difficult for, armed robbers or petty thieves to rob, even in broad daylight, not to talk of in front of cameras, without wearing masks. But now, because it's becoming increasingly difficult for the police to be able to control some of these criminals, and so you find out that they become more daring by the day. And so because and then sometimes you with the kind of sophisticated equipment available now, anybody that's involved in stuffs like that definitely would know that you know, once your face is captured on the camera, anybody anywhere in the world can see it, you know, with a snap of the finger in a matter of seconds. But to tell you how daring some of these persons have been, because the laws are not to the security agencies. There are a lot of lapses, there are a lot of loopholes, and so the security agencies, they find it difficult meeting up with the sophistication of the criminals, and so that's why you see them.
Okay, we'll go ahead and talk about the lapses of the security situation in South Africa. But now, South Africa is a country quite rich in natural resources and, of course, Commonwealth. And this is not the first time we are hearing of such cases of robbery, mobbing, or even murder. Let's remember the case of Senzo Meyiwa and, of course, the hip-hop star a few days ago. Also, a lot of persons are arguing that these cases came into limelight because of their position. That's the Senzo Meyiwa's case and the Oscar Pistorius' case is still there. So is this medicine, and that now there is a 100,000 rand bounty placed on whoever can produce the robbers of these journalists. Is this medicine after death? Is South Africa focusing on only crimes that come into limelight?
Basically, if you look at the history, you know, of South Africa, where it's coming from, the years of struggle with apartheid, and then the neglect, you know, of the black South Africans, and then that what do you call apathy towards the system. You would say that this had been happening. It's not just happening now. It's had been a consistent thing. But like you know, some of these analysts have said, you hear of these, you know, high-profile murder or high-profile cases because of the caliber of persons involved. You listen to in your reports, some persons, one of the guys that was interviewed did say that he had seen even children at the park and, you know, innocent people being killed as if life means nothing. If you go to some of the ghettos in South Africa, these things, you know, happen like that. And because it has been neglected, you know, you find out that in some cases, even in America, if you go to some black communities in America, the way the policing in these communities is different from the policing in, you know, other the high-profile, what do you call the high-profile communities?
These lapses,
and
quickly,
so,
who do we blame? The presidents who has the power to hire and fire, or the security officials who may not be exactly doing their job well?
Basically, like, that's where I was going to. Basically, when you neglect these ghettos and feel, well, it's them, and so it really doesn't bother me. It will get to a point that these people in the ghettos will not only be operating in the ghetto, will move to some of these cities and these high-profile places.
Okay, quickly.
So that's where the policing, you know, you need to look at it from the grassroots, from the basics. You nip it in the bud before it gets to the level it is.
Okay, quickly, let me bring in Dr. Jendele Hungbo, who is joining me on phone. Dr. Hungbo, thank you indeed for your time. Now, most people attest to the fact that the crime rate in South Africa is alarming, but others believe some of these figures could be misleading. How would you react to this?
When you talk about the figures being misleading, that might just be when you're looking at whether those figures are exact or whether those figures can be of any use in terms of people wanting to come to conclusions about the rate of crime in South Africa when you compare that to elsewhere in the world. But quite interestingly, just enough to say that the crime rate in South Africa is very, very high. At times you might even want to say that the crime rate is abnormally high. And if you compare to other cities in Africa, for example, you will find out that the rate of crime in South Africa kind of far outweighs the rate of crime in other African cities. And that is not limited to Johannesburg alone, because in most cases when people talk about high crime rates in South Africa, the focus is on Johannesburg. But again, if you look at different kinds of reports, in 2014, the Guardian of London did a report looking for the 10 most criminal cities in the world. And Cape Town came number 7 in that report, which is also to tell you that apart from Johannesburg, Cape Town is also a place where there is high rate of crime. And in a way, you will see that that is tied to the kind of modernity or the kind of development or the kind of urbanization that is taking place in most of these places. The level of inequality in South Africa is very great, and that could also be one of the factors for crime. And so the cost of living in South Africa generally, especially in most of the 8 big cities, is quite very, very difficult. And so when people are kind of pushed to the wall and they have nothing more to do, they tend to resort to crime.
All right, Dr. Hungbo, now there's a saying, an idle mind is the devil's workshop. So one of the reasons people could point out for the level of insecurity in South Africa could be unemployment. Now, unemployment rate in South Africa decreased to 24.3% in the 4th quarter of 2014. What is the government in South Africa doing to check this rate and to ensure that it decreases further?
Yeah, well, I think there is to what government can do in the real sense of the word. I think every year government talks about increasing policing, trying to do everything possible to reduce crime. In actual fact, South Africa is one of the countries, especially in Africa, that spends a huge amount of money on security. South Africa's police are perhaps one of the most well-equipped in the continent. If you look at them, there's hardly any policeman in South Africa who's on duty without a revolver or without a bulletproof vest. And you see most of the time they've got that equipment backup. But again, the question you ask is how come that the rate of crime is still on this very high side? And I think we need to begin to look at it from the sociology of the South African society itself. If you look at the dynamics of South African society, then this tendency after the return to civil rule, so to say, or after the collapse of apartheid in 1994, to have a society that is very free, to also have a society that does not kind of demonize people in order to punish them. And that has led to different steps being taken. For example, the abolishment of capital punishment in South Africa. The laws do not allow you to kill anyone, even if the person kills the whole country.
All right, Dr. Jendele Hungbo, I'd have you hold that thought for a bit. Now, it's hard to dispute the fact that South Africa is a place where a lot of violent crimes happen in the cities. Elsewhere on the continent, the story is not so different, as you have young people taking to crime in its various forms due to lack of education, poverty, unemployment, and social inequality. We'll go on a quick break, and Africa Today continues. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, according to statistics, South Africa has roughly 50 murders per day, in which most of them are crime-related. Meanwhile, the deaths of high-profile personalities like Senzo Meyiwa and River Steenkamp recently sparked a debate on the need for gun control in the Rainbow Nation. Now, I'll come to my guest in the studio now, Mr. Oshoma. The gun control campaign came up after the River Steenkamp saga, even though that could be a very emotional topic because of the ruling. But we are hearing that, even though we are still going to confirm from Dr. Jendele Hungbo, we are hearing that the campaign hasn't been able to push so far. What would you advise authorities in South Africa to do, particularly because of the Steenkamp issue?
Like I said, you find out that in Africa, until it happens to somebody in authority, we hardly look at some of these issues. And that is why it's very easy for somebody to dispute figures, to say, I think some of these figures are overrated or exaggerated because they are basically not happening, to high-profile people. So that's why it is difficult to push this gun control. But if this, and then what the government, should know it's that it is still very easy now to look at the issues holistically and see how do we push this to ensure that we do not, take this beyond the level that is unimaginable. But if it goes beyond this, you find them also now begin to say, oh, look, if only we had known, we should have done this years ago. And that's what actually led to the level where we are now. Like Doctor said, after the apartheid, you needed to build a rainbow nation, so to say. And so because of that, some of the laws were relaxed. And it also was an opportunity, to have everybody on board, so to say. But in the same vein, they also did not, put into contest the psychology of the average black South African and those that have been impoverished and those that have been pushed to the war and those that have been fighting and where they were coming from.
Now, in that line of thought, a lot of persons would agree and say, yes, these high-profile cases are being given too much attention, or they are being given the attention they have because of the personalities involved. But on the other hand, some others would argue and say that let's treat these high-profile cases, let's give it as much attention. We hear that on YouTube, the attack caught on robbery of the SABC reporters have hit 2 million views. So some people will say, let's give this attention to these high-profile cases and hope that with this, when these cases are investigated and prosecuted and the criminals are prosecuted, the other cases that are hidden behind the rug will be brought to book. And indeed, the same way those criminals were brought to book for the high-profile cases, they will also be brought to cases in other cases.
Like I believe an injury to one should be an injury to all. But unfortunately, it is difficult for you to put, all the cases on the top burner at the same time. There are some you would definitely use as a test case, but the publicity that these high-profile cases, bring to bear, and then also putting South Africa in the limelight for the negative reasons. It is also good for those that are the proponent of the fact that, look, the moment you take these high-profile cases, you project it the way it is, and then it should be able to at least create a situation where the government will say, you know what, we need to put a stop to this. But how well they treat is another thing altogether, because like I said earlier on, you find out that because they are high-profile cases, it is easy for somebody to say, look, we know this will give us negative publicity, so let's treat this. But the other ones that are happening day in, day out in the ghettos, nobody looks at them, nobody talks about them.
So however way, it's a step in the right direction.
Yes, it's a step in the right direction.
Okay, let's bring in Dr. Humbo now. Dr. Humbo, some people believe that criminal activities in South Africa seem to have inspired xenophobic attacks. How related do you think these issues are?
Yeah, well, I think they might be looked at from two different perspectives, maybe separate, but also at the same time, in a way, xenophobia crime might in some cases be related to xenophobia. But in any case, my understanding of xenophobia and crime is simply that, look, xenophobia is a crime. Other criminal activities that come along with xenophobia are also crimes in their own right. Take, for example, the recent looting of shops owned by foreigners in some townships in South Africa. The argument the narrative that has come from mainly the government circles is to say that, oh, these are criminal activities, it is not xenophobia. But the question that you ask is xenophobia itself not a crime? If something is a crime, let's make it a crime so that we can actually find a better way of dealing with it. And so if you have someone attack a foreigner for the purpose of for the singular reason that person is a foreigner, that is a crime that should be treated on its own, even if it's just common assault. And so, but again, in addition to that, if someone loots someone's shop, that person should also be treated to the criminal activity of looting. Again, if someone shoots someone, that person should be treated as someone who has shot someone, who has been engaged in a particular criminal activity. But the tendency of government to deny, to live in denialism, to claim that, no, this is not xenophobia, has continued to allow for the aggravation of some of these criminal acts, and that is quite unfortunate.
All right, Dr. Humbo, I've heard a lot of persons on the internet arguing that Cape Town might be more dangerous than Joburg, and they want to move to Joburg because of that, and some others are saying, no, Joburg is safer, and I want to move to Cape Town. Now, let's talk about the issue of criminality, how to deal with it, not just in South Africa, but on the African continent. What are your thoughts? What can governments of African countries begin to do to check the issue of insecurity in their countries?
Yeah, I think we have kind of, just by the side, hit on a few of the possible solutions. I heard that we were just talking about questions of gun ownership and gun control. But in the real sense of the word, if we want to deal with crime, we have to kind of find ways of dealing with the way people get hold of illegal firearms. We also have to kind of take a second look at the justice system to see whether the justice system is actually working in terms of reducing crime. Thirdly, we have to think of how to reduce inequality in society, because where people live in penury and see others live in abundance, or see them live in opulence, and even where people cannot even explain the source of their wealth, there is the likelihood that the ones who are in penury get envious of the ones who they think are holding to what is common property. And so they might then go for them and then commit crimes against them. Again, we also have to call on the media. In some cases, the media has not been helpful enough in terms of controlling crime. In terms of, the media needs to kind of evolve new ways of dealing with questions of crime beyond the sensationalism that we see in the way crime is reported. I mean, the story you started with, for example, the story of the people who are mad. I mean, it's viral on the internet, it's on YouTube, everyone is watching it. But the question is, will the media be ready to put that story up beyond that level, beyond the fact that, hey, you look at us, we are being mocked before the camera. We need to begin to look at ways in which the media too can assist. And also communities have to be forthcoming with information. Because if you want to control crime, information is very vital. And then we also need to equip the police the more. And police also need to become people-friendly, such that people will then be willing to volunteer information to the police without necessarily getting into trouble. I think we need to kind of think of a mix of solutions that will help us to reduce crime rate, especially in the big cities of Africa.
All right, Dr. Jendele Hugo, many thanks to you indeed for speaking with me from Mafeking in South Africa. Now, I'll come back to you, Dr. Mr. Oshoma. Now, he mentions two vital points, the media, the role of the media, and of course, police being more people-friendly. In police stations here in Nigeria, you go into a police station and you see the police is your friend. But how friendly do you think the police actually is in Nigeria and other parts of Africa?
Let me tell you, there was a major robbery attack in Lekki yesterday, and about 3 police officers were shot dead, and the police command were nowhere to be found until later in the evening, where they came in and started arresting innocent people. The robbers came in a boat, robbed, and left in a boat. And we've heard of police saying, oh, they have major equipment, they bought helicopters for patrol, and we didn't see any of that yesterday. And so that's the kind of police that we have in Nigeria, and then also in most countries in Africa. You find out that there's little, in Africa mainly, there's little the media can do. With the kind of media that we have in Africa, medias that are affiliated to politicians and, government ownership. And so the independence of the media is still not something you can truly, talk about here. You can. So unless you have an independent media that will be able to go the whole hog, it will be difficult for them, depending on what the government want to cover, depending on what they want to expose. Okay. And then the level of poverty, the level of poverty in Africa. You hear most of these Western countries, anytime, sometimes you hear. The first time I traveled to the UK, I asked myself, I said, how come you hardly hear of HIV/AIDS in the United Kingdom? The only time you hear about HIV/AIDS in the United Kingdom is HIV/AIDS in Africa. And so, because there is so much poverty here, you hear foreign countries wanting to donate to alleviate poverty in Africa. And yet, there are government here, and you have government officials who are living in affluence. And until you begin to look at the fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policies, not just in Nigeria, in African countries, and then this sit-tight attitude, like Doctor said, the gap between the rich and the poor is so wide.
Okay, quickly, apart from the role of the media and, of course, security officials, there's a saying that evil prevail when good men do nothing about it. I've heard of cases where people, take for instance the robbery you mentioned, you mentioned that people that were not affected do not care, like, oh, I wasn't robbed, oh, I did not lose my life, so tomorrow is another day. You know, what can people like you, who may have witnessed the robbery, or you who is genuinely concerned about those that lost their lives, begin to do in Africa to bring attention and make sure this criminal is left unchecked? First and foremost,
the state needs to protect you. And then also, some of the videos we watch in online are videos that were uploaded by people who were in their houses, who saw this, and had, you know, took pains to record it. And the best they can do is to upload it. And then it now beholds on, you know, the security operatives to begin to analyze these videos and then say, look, people have supplied information, you know, by uploading this in the public domain to tell the world this is what is happening around. But you find out that rather than take it up from there, innocent people are arrested, and then, like, you now begin to hear of the technical aspect of it, statistics, is it true, is it not true, somebody's trying to pen the government bad and all of that. And so we politicize the whole issue. And at the end of the day, the criminal goes unpunished, and so he goes somewhere else prepared for that same crime. He commits it over and over again. And the criminal justice system here, not just in Nigeria, in most parts of Africa, or apart from South Africa and a few other countries, is so sluggish that at the end of the day, in some cases, you find that the criminal, once you can afford a very, you know, good defense lawyer,
so in other words, it behoves on the security officials to do their job well, and of course, criminal.
You need everybody's hand must be on deck.
We'll leave it at that for
quickly,
now.
The government need to set the framework.
Okay, we'll hope for that. We'll hope the governments of Africa, they can all watch and begin to put their house in order. Many thanks to you indeed, Mr. Liberos Oshoma, for joining us in Africa today. Now, looking at the rates of crime and level of insecurity in parts of the continent, many say there has never been a better time to talk about the youths, especially when the number of people aged between 12 and 24 is more than 1 billion. If anything, recent events in South Africa should be a wake-up call to leaders on the continent, acting as a springboard to address the root causes of criminal activities beyond launching investigations and making arrests. That's our show for today. But don't forget, you can follow us and join the conversation on Twitter at CBC Africa Today. On behalf of the team, I am Blessing Idahosa. And as always, remember, this is Africa. Bye for now.